finally on day like 47, somewhere in there was enough on my mind. I thought, all right, I just got to get some stuff out. It's not fair that John doesn't know what I'm thinking, and let me just puke some words at him for a moment or a half hour. I think it probably was, and let him know everything that's on my mind, and then we can just get past it.
This is a scenario that probably sounds familiar. Sometimes we have so much on our minds that we just need to let it loose. But which causes more damage? Stifling your thoughts and letting them build in your own head? Or releasing them and potentially laying the burden on somebody else?
But was I a piece of a distraction so that he didn't see something he should have seen? Did he or we not see it because we were distracted by the social element?
And as your environment becomes more extreme, so do the consequences.
Then he was swimming and I was trying to get him out, and the ice was breaking underneath me, so I kept moving back and he kept moving forward.
Who are the Mountain Meisters?
Committing to the goal and galvanizing you and your team behind that one single focus.
Being at peace with that fear and being okay with it.
You gain a real appreciation for your life and for what you have.
Learn about their extreme lives on rock, snow, and ice with your host, Ben Schenk.
Hello, Meister fans. A couple of quick things before we get to the show. If you haven't already gotten a free audiobook from us, do that because it really helps us out. The link is right on our website. It's the one that says free audiobook in case you're having trouble finding it. Audible has an enormous selection of books, and I'd be happy to give you some recommendations. If you'd like, send me an email, ben@MTNmeister.com. Also, if you're listening to this episode shortly after it's released, that means I'm currently at the Outdoor Retailer trade show in Salt Lake City, seeing the latest and greatest products on the market. I'll be recording a podcast episode from that location. And if there are any companies or products or technologies that you'd like me to include in that episode, you just want to learn more, let me know. Send me an email, ben@mtnmeister.com. I'm at your disposal. Okay, back to the show. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Mountain Meister. I am your host, Ben Schenk, and with me today I have Tyler Fish. Tyler Fish, welcome to Mountain Meister.
Thank you very much for having me.
For the listeners who don't know Tyler, he is a wilderness expedition leader and an associate program director for Voyager Outward Bound. Perhaps his most notable expedition was the one to the North Pole in 2009, where he and John Huston, a fellow Mountain Meister, were the first Americans to reach the North Pole unsupported. Tyler, congratulations on that.
Thank you very much.
We've had, as I mentioned, John Huston on the show for episode number 11, and we also had Eric Larson on for episode 46. For the listeners, check those out if you want another look at polar exploration. We're going to talk about some different topics with Tyler today, but I will say sometimes, Tyler, I get complacent, and I have to remind myself that like going to the North Pole isn't very normal, even though I've talked to a few people who have done it. This is a really weird thing to do. How'd you get involved in this?
Well, first of all, I think you're absolutely right. It's a weird thing to do. I mean, nobody really understands just how few people actually try this expedition. I mean, if you were to have a visual, it would be astounding how many people climb Everest or go to the South Pole versus attempt to get to the North Pole. So you're absolutely right. It's very, very rare. As to how I got into it, I'll tell you what I didn't do. I didn't have this dream my whole life. I know what I want to do ever since I was a child. I want to go to the North Pole. That was not the case.
Huh.
No, not at all. And basically what happened was I had been working for Outward Bound as an instructor, summers, winters, sea kayaking, canoeing, dog sledding, doing all sorts of different activities. And basically, throughout that whole time, I was learning how to be hungry and cold and wet and dry and dehydrated and overstuffed with food and basically always taking care of myself. And that's what an expedition is really. It's a self-care challenge, And So I learned how to do that, and then at some point, I think it was 2006, John, who I'd worked with at Outward Bound, he came back from Greenland, and he'd been spending time in a tent with a bunch of Norwegians. And from my understanding, there was a conversation mostly went like this: John, no American has done this expedition. And John kind of went, huh, at least to my imagination. And he comes back and tells me, we pretty much have the identical conversation, where he says, Fish, no American has done this expedition. And I go, huh. And it kind of stopped there for a bit. And then weeks later, we find ourselves at a house I was renting in town in Ely, and we have another conversation. And basically the conversation ended with, what do you think? And we both thought the opportunity was there, and we decided to grab it. I mean, honestly, that's what it was.
Funny.
And that's a small snowball of a thing, right? And slowly it gained momentum. Yeah.
I said it's very weird, but I found out that Ely is in northern Minnesota. So if there's one person in all of the states that's going to be a polar explorer, it's probably somebody from northern Minnesota, right?
Well, actually, it's true in some ways. When you're hauling tires around northern Minnesota, dragging them behind you, and you're in Ely, people look at you and go, "Oh, it's one of those guys." Whereas John training in Chicago, I think, got a much different reaction.
He did. He told us that story.
Yeah, for me, it's not the same at all. I actually think that Minnesota has an unsung history when it comes to polar exploration, and in particular the North Pole. There are many Minnesotans who have been involved in Arctic exploration. Will Steger, Lonnie Dupree, Eric Larson, to name a few. Anne Bancroft, Julia Hignell. I mean, there's many, and we don't know that. But you're really, where else is it going to be cold enough? Where else is the cultural history alive of dog sledding and skiing, and that cold is good for you, and everybody's strong and good looking and might have kids someday. So
sounds like there's a lot of pride in your voice for the Minnesota.
The polar contingent needs to stand up and be recognized. I think so.
You train and train and train for this. We talked to John and Eric about training and eating. Let's go to the expedition. And I guess what you were thinking about going into the expedition, did you guys place like a likelihood on succeeding this? So, like, what were the chances that something like this could be succeeded by you guys?
Well, it's a good question because it's a mind game for sure. And we knew, the great thing that we had going into this was the right expectations. We knew that this expedition is very, very challenging because it starts out hardest. It's the coldest, darkest, heaviest it's going to be in an environment you've never been in. You can't train in it because it's too expensive to get to. So it's not like play football and go train on the football field, So it's coldest, darkest, heaviest, and we're going to go so slow in the beginning. And we knew that. That's the thing. We knew it. And we didn't care how fast we went. I mean, our shortest day, we spent 7 hours to go less than a mile in the first 2 weeks. But we didn't care because the first 2 weeks, basically, the rules that we lived by were don't break anything, don't freeze anything, don't get hurt. Work on your routines. That's it. That was the mindset going into it, and that really served us well. And it was really, let's focus on the here and now. We're not going to focus on getting to the pole. That just doesn't matter. Simultaneously, of course, we're in awe of where we find ourselves. Right here I am in the edge of North America. I'm at the tip of the world, basically.
You had never been there before, right?
No. Mm-mm.
Amazing. So some quick stats for the listeners. They went 475 miles over 55 days, consumed 8,000 calories apiece each day, temperatures at minus 60. All of those things sound kind of miserable except for the 8,000 calories a day. I would like to try that for one day, I think. Did you look forward to waking up in the morning? Like 55 days of this over and over and over again. I'd imagine you have to have a positive attitude, but when people wake up in the morning to either exercise or go to work, nobody really feels like waking up. Did you have that same mindset?
Well, we did wake up every morning at 5 a.m. And and John woke us up because he had the alarm in his sleeping bag, so he would always wake us up. And I did not dread waking up. I'm a morning person. I don't drink coffee. The only thing you're in, this nice warmth, this cocoon of warmth, and so you don't really want to get out, but you have to. Mm-hmm. But dreading it, no. Now, some people worried, including John. He worried about me. He's like, 55 days is Fish going to be able to do it? But this is where I am the right person just based on some inherent abilities that I have, and one of those abilities that I have is the longer the expedition, the better it is. The more energy I get, the more momentum I get. So that never really got to me. No, I was always ready to start each day and let's see what happens.
Interesting. So that is a strength that you have. Could you point to a weakness that you had on the trip? And you have a teammate for a reason. Was John able to counter a weakness that you had?
Yes. My weakness, John and I are very similar in a lot of ways, similar size even, which is convenient, if you ever have to switch clothing, which we did. But mentally we're different. We have a slightly different sense of humor, although we both like Talladega Nights. That movie.
Yeah, I hate that
Shake
movie.
and bake, Well, you can't come on our trip then.
Right. No worries. You can leave me behind.
Okay. John is very detail-oriented and strategic, I think, or at least can take on that role. I am more big picture focused, and I would say tactical. Like, what is it right now? What is it in the moment that I have to do to make a situation better? And optimistic. I'm very optimistic that way. Like, what can I do now? What can I do now? What can I do now? What do I have control over? So, and John worries more, and I'm not a worrier. And, that's both of those are very important, and we balance each other out, I think.
You guys must be so close after going through something like that. Do you still talk all the time?
Yeah, I'm going to call him today, actually, probably after this or on my way home or something.
I can't even imagine how close you must be with somebody.
Well, sure. I mean, we've definitely gone through fire, and that's a good thing. I point to this expedition as a time when John and I got closer. We're better friends because of this, and I think that speaks well of our approach, because these expeditions can tear people apart too, and it's the opposite. And when we wrote the book, that brought us even closer together. So it's been a long journey of getting to know John Huston, that's for sure, and getting to know myself also.
Was there a time when you guys got really frustrated with each other?
Yes, multiple times. Not in an unhealthy way. I think that frustration or disappointment or confusion or any of that happens in relationships, that's normal. And what's most important is how you work with it. In a successful expedition relationship, you work with it and figure it out. But John and I, are the hardest part about this whole project in a lot of ways was the planning. Our planning of the trip was very imbalanced. When I came to this expedition, I was not married, did not own a house, and did not have a child. And then somewhere in between committing and going, I got married, bought a house, and had a kid.
Wow.
Not what I'd recommend. So what happened was we had some inherent imbalances in our planning that we did not anticipate or want, but they were there, and some of them needed to be there. And we had to figure that out. But what it meant was that going into the expedition, there was some imbalance in our relationship. And that's what you don't want on the ice. You want to both be, on par with each other and knowing where you're coming from. And so I think that our relationship was kind of hung over, so to speak, because of that, and that affected us. And we dealt with it over time. And then finally on day 47, somewhere in there was enough on my mind. I thought, all right, I just got to get some stuff out. It's not fair that John doesn't know what I'm thinking, and let me just puke some words at him for a moment or a half hour, I think it probably was, and let him know everything that's on my mind, and then we can just get past it. So I did that, and that was really cathartic for me, and I think really hard for him. But at the same time, it allowed us to move one step closer, and we got past it, and it was awesome. That
is so neat. You always hear about people saying, talk it out. You need to talk it out. And that's what you did. But this is such an amplified environment. If that didn't go right, this is high repercussion.
Right. And it's funny you say that, because I think there were repercussions. I mean, there were benefits, but there were also negative consequences. This is by my memory now as I'm thinking about it. It was the next day, I think, that John went through the ice. The rule was whoever is leading at that moment, whoever gets to the lead, that person makes the call to go around it or go over it or whatever. John got there and it was his call, and he decided to ski over, and I thought it was a good call, and then he's in. Yeah. And swimming up to his neck, And granted, there was a lot on John's mind, and it wasn't. I'm not going to take all the credit for that. But was I a piece of a distraction so that he didn't see something he should have seen. Not that I was seeing it either, but did he or we not see it because we were distracted by the social element, which is hugely distracting. And we tried. We'd made a throw rope that I could throw to him. It failed. Then he was swimming, and I was trying to get him out, and the ice was breaking underneath me, so I kept moving back, and he kept moving forward. And I mean, in the end, he got out. And then I'm sure the question on both of our minds was, "Oh my gosh, are your skis still attached?" Right? Because we have the goal in mind. We have this goal in mind, and we knew that the skis are critical. That's what we believed in. And getting him out, then there was a lot of yelling and a bit of chaos, and me trying to stay half a step ahead of what he wanted and needed. And in the end, I left him sitting on the ice on a pad in his sleeping bag eating chocolate while I went to put up the tent and think about what we're going to do next.
So he was not wearing kind of the waterproof suit? No,
the dry suits. No, we if we didn't have to put on the dry suits, it's a lot faster. Mm-hmm. Right? And at this point, it's starting to get sort of race-like. We're racing time to get to the pole. And towards the end there, all of a sudden, we started to turn our vision towards arrival.
In the last 66 hours, you basically slept for around 3 hours. You guys were just in a race to get there. You would ski for 12 hours, then sleep and eat and drink for an hour, and kind of repeat that 12 hours of going, 1 hour of sleeping and fueling. How were you emotionally at that point? Like physically, this is obviously a test. Can you take us to like how you were feeling emotionally, like what's going on in your mind?
Sure. Well, first of all, to clarify, we hadn't had any days off. So up until this point, it's been, 52 days of expedition. Of course, prior to that, it's, years of preparation. And so we're very tired. We had 3 hours of sleep in the last 66. We probably had 8 hours of sleep in the last 96. Wow. So we're definitely sleep deprived. How was I emotionally? On the one hand, relieved because we had a new plan, right? Okay, we've got a new plan. This is going to work. So here we go. So that was a good thing. Also, emotionally, I would say I was fragile. I've never felt so fragile in my life. There's a part in The Hobbit when Bilbo's saying, I feel like butter spread over too much toast, and I think that's how I felt for sure. So there's that, and then there's a lot of thoughts in my head. I remember that last morning, which was really like 1:30 a.m. or something, when we're getting up and ready to go. I'm thinking, okay, this is going to be our longest day. We might make it. We might not make it. Am I going to be the reason we don't make it? What else? Oh, do I want it to be over? Because when life on an expedition is good, it's really good. And yeah, I wanted to get to the North Pole, but I wasn't ready to leave the ice or leave John or rush into media and family and all that I knew was coming. I didn't want that. Life on an expedition is good.
How is that possible that you say life on an expedition is good, yet there are other people, you're both human, yet they so try to avoid uncomfortable scenarios like these?
Well, they haven't experienced what I've experienced.
Oh, okay. So this is interesting. Do you think that experiencing something such as this is good for everybody, or is this just something that is good for you?
When you say like this, let's qualify. I'm not saying that anybody or everybody should go to the North Pole, but I think something like this, meaning an expedition where you're away from distraction and totally focused on a tangible goal, the balance between challenge and ability is really perfect, and you're taking risks and it's working and you're engaged with this other person and it's going well. Like when all of that is happening and you're physically active at the same time, yes, it's good for everybody. I believe that.
Very cool. Let's move on to your gear recommendation, Tyler. We like to ask all of our guests for some gear recommendations, and you guys had 350 pounds of gear on the expedition. So give our listeners something that they have to have.
Well, we had 600 pounds total of food and fuel and equipment. But if we get rid of the food and the fuel, I'm actually wearing one of these pieces right now because my office is cold.
Perfect.
Yep. I have a down vest on that I love, and it is not the vest that went on the expedition because it's a size smaller, but it's the same model. And That was a very versatile piece of equipment. I could put it on in the morning. I could put it on in the evening. I could put it on during a rest. I mean, it comes off. It goes on based on what I need. It was just awesome. You want gear that is versatile. How many different roles can it play? Because you don't need to take a lot. Like, let's simplify. So down vest is good.
What kind of down vest is it? I'm curious.
It's a Bergens of Norway down vest. It's fairly simple, really. Yeah. It's got, zips up and has some snaps, and it's got 2 pockets, 3 pockets. Yeah, the good gear doesn't need to be complicated at all or fancy. It just needs to be functional and durable and repairable.
Yeah, I heard you guys had to do some repairs on the trip, right?
That's right.
Skilled sewer.
The number one repair kit item: needle and thread. Mm-hmm. And I've backed that up over time. I've asked different expeditioners and base camp managers and that kind of thing. I said, hey, if you're gonna have a repair kit and you're gonna have one thing, what's it gonna be? And they all said needle and thread.
Wow.
Yep. Let's see other pieces. Go ahead.
Yeah. Go. Give us one more.
People may be interested to know that I wear glasses. And often people ask me, so did you wear glasses on the trip? And for the first 20 days or so, I didn't because it was too cold. So I just, my vision isn't that bad, so I would ski without. And there's nothing really to look at anyway. So, but later I wore Oakleys, a pair of Oakley sunglasses, and I had a pair of Oakley clear lenses also. And I loved those glasses. Those Oakley glasses I have are still my favorite piece of eyewear I've ever owned. I wear them driving. I'm a cross-country ski coach. I wear them coaching. I wear them at the beach. Anytime I can, I wear them.
Do you still have that same pair of glasses?
Oh, yeah, they're right here.
I'm very impressed. I lose glasses all the time. And I think about this. Sunglasses and maybe not prescription lenses, but sunglasses are just a great business to be in because people lose them all the time. And I can't imagine how many repeat purchasers there are of sunglasses.
Yeah, it is probably a good business to be in. And once you get loyalty, you've got loyalty.
Exactly,
I love my Oakley, so I'm an Oakley guy now.
Yeah, very cool. So we talk about how challenging yourself, having this relationship with a person is so beneficial. I'm curious, how have you changed from the person before that expedition to after? How have you either improved or if there is anything that you've had a problem with after the expedition? Yes.
So, life was challenging because like I said, I got married, I bought a house, I had a child, and I had a job, and when there's a lot of pressure, then you spend 55 days on the ice with nothing much to look at except for the ice and maybe another person. You start to think and you get lost, and you just let your mind run. And so you eventually turn to, what should I make different? What should I do differently? I think, how's my life different? I think I recognize the power of doing. That belief is not enough. You can believe really strongly and think about something a lot, but doing itself has a lot of power and changes your perspective more than anything. So if I'm ever not sure what to do, sometimes I just do something, and that frees me up, sort of dislodges my mind and keeps me going. That's a good thing. I like to think that when I got back from the expedition, I like to think that it taught me patience, because you cannot beat the ocean, frozen or otherwise. And the Arctic Ocean, the wonderful aspect of the Arctic Ocean is that it throws at you a challenge, and then it throws at you another challenge, and then it throws at you another challenge, and then it'll throw you the first challenge again, days later. So you're never really done with any challenges. So I think about that. I also think that it did teach me the very real value of how proactively we communicate and how much we hold things in and how damaging that can be to hold things in. And it's funny, at the same time I say that the ocean taught me patience, it also taught me impatience in that I just don't have time anymore for things that go unsaid. Let's just get it out there. Come on, let's do it.
Tyler Fish, wonderful having you. Really, really interesting discussion. Thank you for joining us today.
Yeah, you are very welcome, and it's a wonderful jog of memory every time.
For the listeners, check out highlights of today's episode on our website, MTNmeister.com, on Tyler's Meister profile page. You can also find the book about their expedition called Forward. We'll have the link to that on our website as well. Tyler, thanks for joining us.
You're very welcome, Ben. Thank you.
Hey guys, I hope Tyler Fish got you fired up to do something cool in 2015. And if he did, we have something to help you out. On our website, we're writing down our goals for 2015 and making them public. Episode 98, if you didn't catch that one. If you haven't posted your goals yet, do it. Share them with the world. We may even feature you on a future episode of MTNmeister. Oh, and while you're at our website, capitalize on that free audiobook. If every single person listening to my voice right now did it, that would support this podcast for a long time. As always, enjoy doing the rest of whatever you do when you listen to this podcast. Until next time, I am Ben Shank, and you have been listening